Welcome back, everyone, for part two. Very pleased this time to be joined by Dave. Stephen had to leave us. I don't know why Stephen feels like he's not qualified to talk about rum. Fortunately, Dave is, and I feel happy with this one as well. So we've got a different take on this little part. What we're doing now is we're looking at we've considered rum's past in Scotland, the connections, and now we're considering the new wave of producers, of which there really are some exciting things going on. And you know what? The people I've talked to on the run-up to Scottish Rum Festival, a number of people haven't realised quite how vibrant the rum industry is in Scotland, with a number of producers out there. And so I'm really hoping that this whole festival and everything else is really going to change that. But what we've got some fantastic products.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think I rewind a few years, and I was trying, and this is more UK-wide generalisation. People are making rum in the different places, and there was very much a sameness about everything that was coming along. It's like they've all read the same manual, or they're all following the same spec, and one producer didn't really taste significantly different to another. And it's like, great, but you guys are going to need a point of difference if you're going to want to sell, because come on, you've got to stand out there. You know, that unaged pot still white rum. And what next? But I think generally, the market's changed now.
Very much so. I mean, just looking at what's out there in the market, and I'm equally enthused and amazed at how much it is being made in Scotland. I think you're getting real individual styles beginning to develop and develop quickly. I would agree 100%. I mean, the last thing that you want to do is just have this kind of identikit category, where everything's tasting the same, because it doesn't help the producer, it doesn't help the consumer either, because well, that's what rum is, so it doesn't really matter what I buy. So having individuality is really important. And having tried some of the kind of experimental side, the unreleased works in progress, there's some even more fascinating areas that are beginning to develop, with how do you build a Scottish dunder pit? It's genuinely exciting. And and also thinking kind of further down the line as to not just how good is it, but how is it going to be used, and seeing that variety that you taste some, you go, well, actually I can see that working brilliantly in a daiquiri, or I can see that competing in a very interesting fashion with some Scotch whiskies or whatever. So I'm blown away by the quality that's coming out of Scotland.
We have I think that the world of rum, the world of Scottish rum, kind of breaks into three areas, the way I see it, and criticise me freely for this, but those that are making rum from first principles, so they're buying that molasses or whatever, fermenting, distilling. We've got some that are then buying in from various sources, and then packaging it up and sort of giving that kind of, like, they're putting a Scottish touch to it, Spirit of Scotland, or whatever you want to kind of put with that. And maybe we're not necessarily talk about those ones so much in this particular segment. But then something that's really big is, I think I mentioned it, I don't drink a lot of it, but spice rum. There is a lot of spice rum coming out in Scotland as well. Yeah. And just about everything you've got. Give me a little secret. I mean, we talked about how you drink it. I mean, spice rum is probably one of the most versatile things you can understand the attraction with.
I can. I mean, I'm like you. I tend not to. The last rum book I wrote, I didn't have spice rum in it at all. I said, just make it yourself. It's quite easy to do. Quite easy to do at home. But yeah, I mean, it ticks lots of boxes, and people enjoy it, and it's easily mixable, and it makes a great drink. But I think as long as it's interesting, as long as it's compelling, and as long as the flavors come over as being natural rather than just lots of essences being added, I think it's a great drink. I mean, in the Caribbean, it's not. It's like, oh, it's great. It's a spice rum. It's this kind of weird kind of crossover between a medicine and the drink. It's a pleasant way to get healthy. So yeah, I'm gled to see it. And I've got some bottles here, but yeah, I mean, I think my main concentration really is going to be on the Scottish distilled stuff, and also, probably anticipating what we'll talk about in a wee while, but the need for an agreed, if not legislation, then a charter of definition of what Scottish rum is. Otherwise, it very, very quickly spirals out of control, and you'll have people coming in, as they have with gin, coming in sort of saying, well, this is a Scottish gin, but it's actually made in London. So yeah.
But there's it. So spice rum has that enthusiasm that can bring a broad audience of people too. But then once they start drinking, for example, like Live, brand new one released, designed specifically for the bar market or whatever, and the same with the Seawolf.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, once they come in, they start realizing, oh well, Scottish rum. Now we want to be able to sort of, like you say, you don't want the gin confusion to replicate. So now's a really good time to grab in on that.
Looking at who is drinking each rum, and I think one of the great advantages of rum is its diversity. So you've got unaged rum, you've got aged rum, you've got super aged rum, you've got spiced rum, etc., etc. But it's always been quite hard to define what rum is. It's you say, well, do you want to drink rum? Everybody's idea of what rum is slightly different. And I wonder whether the spiced rum drinker is also going to be the same drinker that's going to be wanting to have Jaeger aged in chestnut casks. Or whether the person who's going to be drinking a Daiquiri, other than ourselves maybe, the person who's going to be drinking and loving cocktails made with white rums, it's also going to be the rum drinker drinking aged rums. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think that means that you can actually target whole different kind of consumer groups with this one thing called rum. Yeah, so I do wonder whether the person starting off with 100 Cuts or Dark Matter will then become, what will then drink every other type of Scottish rum, or whether they will just continue to proselytise about great Scottish spiced rum. It's not a problem for me. But
no, you know what? I freely say this on all the tastings I ever do, that my name is Peter Holland, and in my youth I drank a lot of spiced rum. I did, Captain Morgan spiced. I drank a lot of it. Probably more than I'd care to admit these days, if I'm completely honest. Certainly to my doctor. But things move on, and of course the interest sparked. Not everyone's interest is going to be sparked by the fact that you mentioned Jaeger, the use of chestnut. Now, like, there's going to be a bunch of people, as soon as you mention that, you go, tell me more. Well, and immediately interest. And then, of course, it's going to go over the head of a bunch of people, and they're not going to be too fussed about it. So,
I think it's really important that you don't, and it comes back to that first point that you so perfectly made, which is it's dangerous to try and be all things to all people. And if you try to be all things to all people, you will make this kind of identikit, really easy drinking, run-of-the-mill, straight down the middle style, which I think, looking in the wider world of rum, a lot of these kind of heavily sugared rums end up tasting exactly the same because they're all heavily sugared rums, and you can't really tell where they're coming from, but they have a certain commercial appeal, but they're not benefiting. It's just kind of this, this kind of beige flavour.
Ironic, actually, because when I tried Ninefold for the first time, I thought there was so. In fact, you know what? I'm going to put some in my glass because I'm picking bottles up and putting them back down again. Dangers of drying out during a conversation. But when I tried this for the first time, I tried it. I love rum festivals, I really do. When I'm in events and you're trying lots of different things, you get to try all those different things. But actually, it's nice to spend a little bit of time with it just alone, so you think in context. But the first thing I took from this was just how fruity it is. It was just, like, for people that are after flavors in rums and things, well, this is it. You have an unaged spirit. That really where all the work has been done in the fermentation, because the flavors aren't in fermentation, where they're certainly not going to be in distillation. And it's wonderful.
Yeah, and I think in a world where so many unaged rums are essentially vodkas, this is clearly a rum. This has got flavour. It's got that real sweet, juicy, fruity character coming through on the palate, and it's not sugary sweetness. That's a real kind of fruit sugar sweetness.
Beautiful texture, and it fills the mouth. So this is a rum that's presented at 40%, so it's not even so it's relying on high ABV to deliver that flavour. There's just lots of flavour there.
Yeah,
so if you're listening, mate, I want a still strength version, please, or at least there's something a bit higher. You heard it here first.
Complex. It's changing all the way through the palate, which is something I always look for in any spirit. The start is sweet, it finishes quite dry. I like that kind of dry, almost kind of dusty, spicy thing coming through on the finish. So you want to have another sip, as you're just doing. But yeah, it's got great complexity. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
It's a revelation, and I kind of want people to be able to try things like this because it just opens up. Just rum can be really good, and you don't have to go traveling very far for it. And I mean, it's, you know, this is never going to be the same price as a bottle of Bacardi, for example.
But it's
This is not the same
100%
product.
better than Bacardi.
It's absolutely amazing, and yeah, and this is an industry that's, you know, sporting, you know, Kit's making it down, yeah, in his little distillery, and he's not been making it for a very long, year or so, and you know, it is one of the newest brands on the market, I'd say.
I was absolutely blown away by it.
I haven't got Sugar House here with me.
Yeah, I've got some Sugar House. A bit more kind of molasses character coming over on that Sugar House.
I like the idea of a producer. Any producer who says, right, that's it, we've done it, and I'm never going to change. I think no, you need to consider and develop and enhance your processes.
But again, it's got beautiful length. I like length in spirits. And this kind of more kind of heightened red fruity character in the middle. So it's almost kind of moves into slightly kind of perfumed area. So this one's a little bit hotter on the palate. It's slightly higher strength. So for me, that kind of indicates it might not. I would quite happily drink the Ninefold on its own. For me, the Sugar House and the Seawolf are made for cocktails and made for lengthening. And they really begin to blossom. You know, if you add a little drop of water to them, because that's what I've got at the moment. I'm not going to make a daiquiri at the moment, but you know, if you add a little bit of water to them, then I think the full character really begins to develop. And I like that almost kind of floral thing, a bit more kind of banana coming through in the Sugar House.
I think maybe I've got a very early one. The
cashew nutty. Lovely, just beautiful flow to them, gentle, extremely well made, and with character. You know, it's not. They're not running. Again, none of these distillers are running away from character. They're not kind of going, oh, I've got to kind of make this bland. They're saying, I want to make a high quality spirit, but I want to make a high quality spirit that kind of speaks of me, and it speaks of different processes and different yeasts and different stills, etc., and they're saying it. You know, both of these, you know, the Sugar House and Seawolf, just fantastic cocktail rums.
When I say this, I've got to qualify this when I say this. Luca Gaccano used a term a few years ago. We talked about like the market in general. We're a Bacardiized market. Yeah, it's the Bacardiization of the market. You don't get to be the biggest rum brand in the world without, you know, being everywhere. I mean, that's the point. And so people's perceptions of what rum comes like is sort of like, and I also, to be fair, just to prove a point, there are far, far lighter rums on the market than Bacardi. But I think in general, people have forgotten that rum is a characterful spirit. You know, that we have become attuned to effectively sugarcane vodka, you know, 5-column produced, 6-column produced spirit, you know, and there's not like so not a nationalist approach, but an enthusiastic Scottish audience kind of going like, yeah, actually want to drink some of this, will naturally remind people that rum has flavour. And we've just tried, got 3 fantastic white rums there. I don't know whether you have the Navy Strength Live. Do you have that one?
I do. Yes. Yep.
So just because this one then sort of takes it a step up even more, because, you know, 57.5%.
Yeah. It's not shy, is it? You know?
No, it's not, and it's out there. It's part of that first collection. I mean, like the team at Matuga have not shied away from the fact they know what's going to sell well. There are flavoured rums in the Live range. There's a spiced, but they have a sort of a regular strength Live and the Navy strength. Now, I was trying this for the first time when I did a little Instagram live with them like a few weeks ago, and so I hadn't tried it until literally as I'm live to the nation, as it were. So I was hoping, actually, as I was sipping it, I was thinking, God, please, God, let this go down all right, because if I start coughing and spluttering all over the screen, it's going to look terrible. But yeah, it just drops down really nicely.
It holds that
the indication of a well-made rum. Yeah.
I mean, you often find with you know, a Navy strength or an overproof style, you know, it's just kind of, you know, it kind of blows your head off. The alcohol is so well controlled here because the flavour is so big, you know, because again, coming back to your point, you know, the fermentation is so well handled that you're building up all these fantastic flavors in here. So though you've got a high strength rum, you've actually got a high strength rum with real character and real flavor to it. It's got much more depth than the other ones. You know, it's richer, it's more powerful. It's got a kind of darker fruit character to it. You know, if we're kind of moving in that kind of fruity camp.
I think it's wonderful. We so far on this, we've touched on a range of different still types as well. That these guys are making it in this sort of Portuguese lambic. Like the direct fire.
Yes.
Like,
And it comes through. I think the guts that you get from direct fire is there, and it's there in all the Matuga rums. You do get this, and it doesn't mean that it's burnt or scorched in any way, but as soon as you use direct fire, you're going to have this extra weight, this extra depth, and this underlying almost, and this is in a kind of positive way, kind of earthy, almost kind of licorice-like character that comes through in the finish.
I think the Maillard reaction in the still, and it really does come through. You know what? I would absolutely love to fast forward 5 years and see what 5 years in cask, how that's going to change and develop. I'm excited.
No, genuinely, that's going to be a killer when aged. I mean, it's great on its own, but that as an aged spirit, I think is going to be amazing. Or that as an aged spirit blended, because don't forget blending, guys, is going to be amazing. Ross in Glasgow sent me over one of his experiments with Dunder, and looking forward to that, which might be on its own, or again, it could be a blending component. Don't be scared of blending. It's
funny. We touched on it in the previous thing, but like Scotch whiskey and blended, the Scotch has this massive. It's done so much for spirits, I think, in general. I think there's so many good things about it, but we've forgotten rum, but we forget that rum in the old days was a blended product. They sort of led the way on this.
Nobody in the right mind. I remember first time I went over to see Carson at Scare. And we were doing esters. We just said, right, let's have a look at how different esters perform. And you move right up to the top end stuff that Hampden's producing. Nobody's drinking that. It's there for blending. It's here. It's that smoky. It's the equivalent of that little touch of smoke that you would put into a blend. So it's if you like that style, fine, you're on your own. But a little touch of that or that style in a blend will actually make a more complex spirits. So yes, you can have it on its own, but also don't be scared of blending. So I think down the line, I think it's going to be really interesting looking at Scottish rum blends and whether different distillers then want to work together to actually, all right, well, I've got a very individual style. I've got very individual style. So, having interesting collaborations, who knows? That's
what you're saying there's going to be a rummy Johnny Walker? Is that what you're saying?
Why not? And I think it's,
wouldn't that be awesome?
Everything is, I think why I'm so excited about it is that we're at the start of something with clearly huge potential. The quality is there. How that is then taken forward, there's infinite possibilities of how this can develop. So I think from their own producer's point of view is don't be restricted in thinking you have to do this, because if you don't start thinking about other possibilities at this stage, you'll begin to get channeled down one particular route. So it's a great time to start looking at
I think we've got a number of factors coming into this. We do have an increasingly geeky kind of rum audience that is able to use the internet to connect and share information. So there's a number of things kind of coming together, and sort of refer back to Kit with Ninefold, that maybe his motives for kind of starting rum were one thing, but because of hanging around on the rum forums, because of talking to people, it's led to statements on the front of the bottle, not putting the obvious white rum. It's pure single rum. He's using the classification. And so it might be that like one person out of 20 looks at that and goes, well, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And most people look past it, but actually that 1 in 20 is actually a really important thing, because this is that kind of influencer and sort of trickle down knowledge effect it's talking about. It brings up conversation.
I agree 100%. But the one caveat that I would have in there is, Scottish rum is at that point where it's going to be the enthusiasts. It's going to be you and I and all the people who are kind of falling in love with all of this, really kind of going, got to try this, this is exciting. But you can't, as a producer, you can't just get carried away and only just produce these kind of weird and very interesting rums for an influential but ultimately very small part of the rum drinking community. If this is going to become a proper commercial medium or large scale commercial enterprise, you have to then also be appealing to a wider, the wider drinker and the wider palate, which is where Livy comes in and where Seawolf comes in, and
designed for a function.
Yeah.
I mean, like Seawolf had the advantage, obviously.
Really important. Yeah.
I mean, Seawolf advantage designed actually by bartenders, kind of, or that bartending background for an actual serve. So I mean, that straight away you're guaranteeing volume. So that's production volume.
Yeah. No, also, I do wonder whether actually Scotland coming in as a rum producing country now, the guys who are making it are kind of taking one step back and going, right, let's see what mistakes everybody else has made, because if you have an established brand, it's quite hard to turn an established brand round, and they can almost like sit back and go, well, none of these rums out there were necessarily designed by bartenders. They were kind of shoehorned into, this should be something that bartenders like. So if you have a clean slate or a blank page, here's a possibility to actually establish all this from the word go. And I think that puts a lot of these at an advantage, to be perfectly honest.
But should we mention some aged examples? I kind of like, if I had to pour one rum right now, the age, I don't have so much in the way of aged Scottish rum. I'm going to pull J. Gow. I think I'm going to pour that in there. I have a lot of love for Colin and what he's doing so very far north. But
this is just absolutely fantastic. It's fantastic.
A very grown-up, thought-out setup, I think, from what I see across the internet. I might have a slight influence on his sort of choice. A few years ago, I was talking about there's life beyond American oak, and maybe that kind of helped fuse some ideas about the use of chestnut, being a more porous, allowing quicker maturation in colder climates, kind of thing.
Yeah, but also, adding a different range of flavors. Chestnut, not much spirit being aged in chestnut these days.
No.
Well, it was widely used, but it's a good style of cask to mature in. So you get less of that kind of big hit of vanillin that you would get from American oak, less of that kind of big kind of lactony coconut thing coming through. But what I get from this absolute finesse, it's beautifully balanced. It's already a really elegant rum. It's a sipping rum, Yes, you could mix with this if you want, but this has got real quality. It's a young spirit, but geez, it's good.
We have the thing. I'm correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe they did a white rum release as such. There, I think it was a spiced, and the spiced, I think, quite frankly, like vodka pays the bills, spiced rum pays the bills. But this was always going to be a plan with the distillery to lay down aged stock. Yep. And that's where they kind of see the value. So there might be a tough couple of years where you kind of you've got to, before you can start selling in a big way. But it works. It really does work. Yeah. When young spirits, I worry when you taste young spirits in competitions and things, invariably that lack of integration. Mm-hmm. You've got spirit and you've got wood, and they just do things and they sort of sit there and they don't talk. But there's no the interest.
I think that's why I've got a slight problem with using tiny casks, because it pushes things across quickly, but it doesn't get any sort of interactive or integrated maturation going on. So you get a huge hit of wood, and you've got spirit, and they're sitting next to each other. Whereas here you're beginning to see, and it is this will continue to mature in a fascinating way. But already this is at the start of a long and elegant maturation. I'm just kind of looking for some notes here. Anyway, kind of caramelized note. There's bits of kind of molasses, tiny little kind of funky thing going in there. Lots of kind of honeyed elements coming in. I got kind of rich tea biscuits, which is kind of one of these things I often get. But on the palate, lovely kind of tropical fruit elements coming in. And then kind of once it goes over the middle of the palate, it kind of deepens into that, again, slightly darker side. Just beautiful.
Time is on their side, because every time I kind of come back to it, when there's a new release or a new, the next batch that come out, it's had a little longer, and But it's funny that the kit that they're using, that very modern ice still. It's that kind of when I compare Matuga and the little alembic, direct fire, and then I still couldn't be more. You know, I mean, it's like you run it via an iPad or something. You know, it's sort of different ends of the spectrum in terms of rum production, and yet the net result is a well-made, thought-out spirit, and everything that's written on there. I mean, I do love to see it. I wish that rum bottles in general didn't have to state that there is no added sugar or anything like that, because that unfortunately seems to be the norm for so many things that they do sweeten. But yeah, zero added sugar. It's there. It's referenced on the back. It's got a lovely colour, lovely flavour, and it's just rum.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be any more complicated.
I think that whole sugar thing is inevitable. It's going to come up. But again, you know, a lesson that you can learn from the Scotch whisky industry is that the people who don't add caramel and don't chill filter will say non-chill filtered and no caramel addition to it, or call it natural or whatever. And you know, the inference as a result of that is that, well, if that's not on the label, then it could well be in there. And you know, rather than kind of fighting about, you know, should there be legislation to stop it, just put it on the label. Just say what isn't in there. You know, so I think it's a very sensible way around it.
Lots of people.
Then people begin to ask the question. You know.
Yeah, exactly. It gets to the point. Well, yeah, people. I as an aside, I think people should, if they are a sweeten, they should write it on the front, because there's lots of people out there that are looking for that style of product. Make it easier for them to find. You know, but let the default be untouched.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
I've got maybe, I don't know whether we've got time. We haven't got time, but we should make time. But I want to go back to Matuga really as well, just to kind of mention one project that they're going on. And this is a company that I've got the special edition.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know, because I'm Flash. But again, it's all about the kind of aging. When they first started, they were sort of working with a company that was sort of more about, I don't know. They could put me correct on this, but it's more about a stainless steel tank with oak staves in it and things like that, you know. And that's kind of the notion of sort of maturing it. Well, it isn't very much the case now that they're putting rum into actual casks, and then they're working with other casks and other. So this particular one I've got here has acacia. You know,
yes.
I've
tried this. It's phenomenal. Yeah,
and I know that they have more things coming. So again, it's one of these things where you have to kind of, you know, it takes time. There's no way of cheating it. And playing heavy metal to a cask, I'm absolutely sure is a load of old bollocks. Oh, sorry, mother. But it's you know, time in cask. You can't cheat that. You know, and so it's a long-term game, and I think that's really wonderful. But I think also, I think the guys at Matuga are kind of maybe hint at this a little bit. I mean, rum's future. I don't know. You know, at the moment, I do feel like we're in a fantastic position as far as Scottish rum is concerned. But what's the next event horizon? What's the next thing? Well, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the next event horizon is volume. You know, to be perfectly honest, there's a lot of booze out there at the moment. You know, and you know, there's a lot of rum, and there's growing interest in rum, and that is to be applauded. But you know, if this is going to become an industry, you know, terrible term, but you know, if it's going to have real commercial potential, then it's got to have a certain degree of volume. You know, the parallel that I would have would be with the Australian whisky industry, which until relatively recently has been made amazing stuff, but in such tiny quantities that people are kind of baffled because it's there, it's gone, it's there, it's gone. So yeah, down like the next stage I see is, yes, continued experimentation, continue making of really a fascinating range of rums, but there have to be at least a couple of them who then step up in terms of volume. I mean, not, you know, building, you know, a vast Puerto Rican style rum plant, you know, but you know, you have to be moving up to the size of a small, you know, a small scale single malt distillery will give you enough volume to be able to spread the word around the world. You know, if you move up to kind of medium size, then you're, yes, of course, that there's incredible fixed costs, etc. But you know, that's got to be the next stage, really. You know, it can't just be a fascinating little specialist niche. You know, if it's going to grow, it's got to begin to take that next step up.
So what do you think? Is it going to be, what's the next catch for consumers? I mean, I'm looking at thinking that really, yeah, I'm looking forward generally to the next sort of like a 5-year-old for example, picking a number out of the air. I don't know what's going to be a good sort of median age for the environment where it's matured in, but you know, a genuinely long age stock of rums. It's going to take time to get there, but I guess what we've sort of indicated with bars and things, that actually probably white rum, so a volume of that sort of cocktail mixing rum is probably where you're going to set that foundation.
Yes, yeah,
and then
very much so, and
sippers will follow.
And beginning to get you know, brand call, you know, so that, you know, if you are a bar, you mention what rum you're using, and people will begin to ask for that rum. You know, it's all that then builds and builds and builds and builds. It's rather than just saying, you know, I would like, you know, a daiquiri, or I'd like a rum punch, you know, I'd like a Sea Wolf, or I would like a Sugar House, or, you know, a Ninefold, blah blah blah. You know, so that's the next. You know, it's, you know, it's shoe leather. You know, I always you know, say this to any new distiller. You know, you're enthusiastic and you're making fantastic product, but you've got to realize that it's a business. You know, so you have to have good distribution. You know, so you got to get out there. There's many other people making great quality spirits out there, making great quality rums. You're fighting it out. Shelves aren't infinitely expanding. You know, so most bars, and certainly most retailers, will have a section set aside for rum, and if you're going to come in there, something's got to go off. So that means inherent quality, but it also means having a story, and it means having good distribution, and it means, in terms of bars especially, once they reopen, getting around and building relationships, and talking to people and persuading them and pouring them drinks, etc. And it's a lot of hard work. But it does pay off. But it's a lot of hard work. And I think the one thing I've noticed with it, it's not just whiskey, it's gin or any other spirit around the world. The number of brilliant small scale distillers who forget that bit, who forget the business side, and fall foul of it down the line. And I don't mean to come a downer, but I'm just sort of saying that has to be the next stage as well.
So you can remain niche, you can remain experimental, but if you want to make it big, you want to change the category, then that commercial vibe has got to be there. You know, that feels like an absolutely perfect place to end the conversation. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed sipping a rum or two with you, mate.
Yeah, it's good.
I hope we can do this again, actually, not via Zoom or something, you know.
It would be an absolute treat. No, thank you. And thanks to all the Scottish rum producers. You know, you're making some amazing stuff. So yeah, I'm so excited.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So we'll say goodbye there, and phase into the next part. Cheers. Bye-bye.